Both the Hebrew and the Christian scriptures offer us some guidance at times like this, and so I'd like to read first from the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want for anything. In green pastures the Creator gives me rest. Besides restful waters he leads me. He refreshes my soul, and he guides me in the correct path. For I live in his name's sake. For even though I walk in the dark valley, I fear no evil, for you, the Lord, are at my side. With your rod and your staff, you give me courage. You spread the table before me in the sight of all my foes, and you anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Only goodness and kindness follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for years to come. When I met Don for the first time, he was on his front porch. And even though from seeing the picture in the obituary, when was that picture taken?
I believe it was about 10 years ago.
About 10 years ago. He was still a man very vibrant with life.
Oh, yes.
And in looking at the picture, you can tell by the sparkle in his eyes that he was a man who was very inquisitive. And some of the stories you told me, he was a man who loved to pull practical jokes.
Yes.
You could sort of tell that in his eyes, that he was sort of one who would like to pull jokes.
Yes.
And he was a man very vibrant. And even though the man that I saw on the porch was very much a shell of himself, you could tell that that spirit was still there, because on the porch he was observing the things that were around him. And so Don, as we know, was a mechanic. And those who are in the Air Force know that the airplanes belong to the mechanics. They only let the pilots borrow them for a few hours at a time. Then they have to give them back to the mechanics who really own the aircraft. And as the mechanics say, sometimes the pilots do horrible things to their airplanes, and then they have to fix them again. And so if we look at Don's life, if we look at his obituary, we can see how he lived his life. He lived some 70 years. Over a third of that was serving his country. Well over a third of that. Korea, Vietnam, other places around the world. Over a third of that. I'm sure several of us can also say we have spent a third or a half of our life doing that. We also look at he spent about half of his life here, even though he was born in New Hampshire, which some people think is heaven. Don thought this was heaven.
Right. He did.
Of course, there is a little bit of water over there that he also thought was heaven, too. A little bit of water. And I asked him, one of the things we have to ask in hospice, what is your next goal? You know, people who are near death, they have to have goals. They often say, the next holiday, the next anniversary. He says, no, when my nephew Ron comes, we're going to go fishing. That's his next goal. He didn't make that goal. And I wish Ron would have been here today, because I was going to ask him, what did you do when you go fishing? Because I discovered many years ago, see, I'm not a fisherman. I went fishing with my dad once, and my uncle and my cousin. I discovered that fishing is not about catching fish. It's about something else. It's about talking. It's about planning. It's about, and I wanted to find out what they did when they really went fishing. But he's not here today, but I'm sure he's here in spirit. Would anybody else like to say anything else today? Anybody like to say a remembrance or anything? Jane, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, Don was a joker.
Yeah, we know he was a joker. You told me a story, but would you like to tell that story?
Yeah, I would.
You what?
His sister-in-law came here from a mountain, and they visited with Don and Lenny. And when I talked to her on the phone, she said, you know, Don always played jokes. And I says, yeah, I know. And she says, we went to Boot Hill, first time they came here. And she was going through the cemetery, looking at who got hanged and everything. And she looked down and she found a dime. And Don and Lenny were walking way ahead. And she come to another one, another grave, there was another dime. And she picked it up. And this went through almost the whole cemetery. She found all these dimes. And she was just so happy. Well, when they got back home, she had this handful of dimes. And she says, look, I found all these dimes. It must mean something. Don and Lenny start laughing so hard. Don was dropping all the dimes. I couldn't get over it.
I'd like to just say something. We lived in the same neighborhood with John and Lenny for 32 years. And so our kids kind of grew up there, well, they did grow up there. And we had two dogs, a big dog and a little dog, Trinket and Pepper, and they would get out while we were gone at work and the kids were at school. And where did they go? They went to Don and Lenny's, and Lenny fed. And that was fun for them every day. Well, the kids would go over and collect them. The kids loved Don and Lenny, and when I told them about first Lenny and then Don, they were really saddened about that. But they had a good relationship with them. They'd go across the street nowadays and get the dogs and they'd visit. So it was really kind of Don and Lenny to kind of take care of our kids and our dogs and everything. So I just wanted to have that also.
Well, I haven't known Don all that many years, but one day when we're looking to buy our house and we're walking around, Lenny comes out and says, "What you doing?" She was always curious, and I can tell you that I couldn't ask for better neighbors. You know, Don and Lenny were just super, and whenever I was in a bind, Don would be there. He'd be the first person I call, and he'd just be there anytime I needed him. I surely will miss him.
Ice away. Ready, ice. Red up. Red up. Red up. Break that. Huh.
On behalf of the President of the United States, the Department of the Air Force, and a grateful nation, we offer our nation's flag for the faithful and honorable service of your loved one.
Thank you so